plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So not only in every heart, but in every atom is the expansion of God or Krishna as the super soul. And is sustaining. You know, the famous Hindu Trinity, they tell you if you go to a religious, world religions in college, right? That's one of the things you'll learn about Indian religion, the Hindu Trinity. So we believe in the Hindu Trinity, but not as they teach it. So the Hindu Trinity is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the maintainer, and Shiva is the destroyer. That Vishnu is the Paramatma, sustaining everything, both as the all-pervading super soul and also as the other Purusha avatars we discussed for the creation and maintenance. So now Krishna is, the rest of this chapter, beginning chapter 15, Krishna is explaining the distinction between the individual living entities and the Supreme Soul. So in this chapter, in the text 15, from me, the living entities get remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. I am the goal of all the Vedic knowledge, the writer of the Vedanta Sutra, and the knower of the Vedas. Then in the 16th verse, he said there's two kinds of living beings. There's the Chara and Akshara. Now Chara means that you're cut off. Chara literally means to fragment. So the Chara living entities are those in the material world who have been cut off, or really we cut ourselves off from the understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're in this big banyan tree that he described of the material world, without mostly the external energy, material energy, but the souls are with it. So there's two kinds of living beings in the world, or in existence, and one is the Chara, the other is the Akshara. Chara Sarvani Bhutani, all the living entities in this world are cut off, but Kutasto Akshara Uchite, those who are Kutasta, who are in oneness, not merged, but in oneness of purpose with the Supreme, they're in that other world. So then now in the present verse, he's saying now, who is that beyond these two kinds of living, of minute souls, there is the Uttama Purusha, the Supreme Person. And Krishna will explain that he is that Uttama Purusha. So the mission of human life is to understand that Uttama Purusha and our relationship with that Supreme Personality. Without that understanding, we are in a dreamlike world of illusion. And we are not in our natural position. Prabhupada's famous phrase, the constitutional position, which really comes from Swarup, our real form and real activity. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us information, not only about the Supreme Person, but the Supreme Person's relation with this material world. What is this material world? Who are we? And how we can cultivate and revive our original understanding and relation with that Supreme Person who Krishna identifies with. So what are some of the other of the descriptions here? Loka Trayam Avishya, it entered into all the three worlds, like I mentioned, through the means of the expansions, the super soul. And Bibharti is maintaining. So this is, Prabhupada quotes this Upanishadic verse, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. I think that was the first verse I ever memorized. It was so easy, right? Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. And it's very illuminating. But what does it mean? So Nityaha Chaitanaha, that's singular. Nitya, you see the Nitya and Chaitana. Nitya means eternal, Chaitana means conscious being. Welcome all. We're on page 610. And Chaitana, and Nityanam is plural. So of all of the eternal living beings, there's one special one. And the verse goes on. Nityo Nityanam Chaitana Chaitanam Eko Bahunam Yovadadati Kaman. How one of the symptoms or one of the characteristics of that individual who's different from all the others is that Eko, that one, Bahunam Yovadadati Kaman, provides the necessities of life for all the others. See? So that's the difference. We're dependent We've learned in this chapter how Krishna, he keeps the planets aloft. He's the light of the sun and the moon. So everything is dependent on. We're completely dependent on that one supreme conscious living being who is all pervading, all knowing, all powerful. We're definitely not that. We're very minute, we're very dependent, we're very fragile, right? But we are eternal, conscious living beings, persons, without doubt. So without understanding our relation with that supreme person, we're adrift here in this world, and we have no permanent situation and suffering. So that's why probably a wise person who can understand this supreme person, Uttama Purusha, is eligible to attain perfect peace and not others. Now in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of discussion, especially in the 2nd chapter, about peace, and also at the end of the 5th chapter, the famous peace formula. Remember Prabhu's peace formula? So that peace is understood to be freedom from desire and freedom from all fear. And you can be completely at peace. Now you can see in this world, where is that? Where do you find that? You can't find it. Every living being is just think of the lower animals or insects. Constant anxiety, right? Constant anxiety. There are so many natural enemies, right? And also a constant desire for maintenance, get something to eat, and then the instinct for reproduction, right? Eating, sleeping, mating, fearing. It's a big thing, fearing. So there's no peace here. This is the world of anxiety. So the spiritual world is known as Vaikuntha, the place where there's no anxiety, there's perfect peace. Krishna, at the beginning, he says, Vihaya kaman yuksavan bhumang chadit nixpa niyamamodanhanka sa shanti madigachati. This word shanti, very famous word. Shanti, 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 oh, right? It was shanti, shanti. I was part of the peace movement when I was young. I mean, who wasn't? So much war. I grew up the Vietnam War. That was when I became aware. It's always war, 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 war. So naturally we wanted peace, but just demonstrating for peace doesn't help. That's not going to make peace. The United Nations was meant to keep the peace. Has it kept the peace? No. Prabhu said just the flags are increasing, meaning there's more and more and more division, between them. So real peace starts here in the heart, individuals' peace, and that means restricting and diminishing the overt, desires that we have for consumption, for sense gratification. And turning that desire into spiritual desire by a desire to serve God. But it's not slavery. It's the most pleasurable thing. That's the most wonderful thing. We're looking for pleasure in the sense gratification and being disappointed life after life after life. Just the opposite, so much suffering. But the magic is, the paradox is, if you forget entirely about your own pleasure and just think of the pleasure of God and the pleasure of the devotees and the service, you'll be completely happy and completely peaceful. That's the formula. So it's very paradoxical, but it works, And so this is Krishna is explaining who is that supreme person who we can really rely on and take shelter of. And that's the Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, any questions on this verse? We go on to the next one. We could actually finish this chapter tonight. Madhusudan Prabhu.
One observation. At a certain point in my development, our development, we hear all of this, and because of some past, lifetimes of contamination, we just think it's a play. It's like, is it really?
Yeah.
At a certain point, it's like you change from not really believing in it deeply.
Yeah.
It's no matter what you do, unless you reach a point in your own purification that you can.
I know.
Just say yeah, because you can't convince. You can't just convince you. Say yes.
Well, this is the Maya energy. The three modes. It covers your knowledge, And it also can undermine your faith, because what is the origin of this faith? I mean, really, we can see how all important it was for Prabhupada to come, because he was absolutely sure. You read this Bhagavad Gita, and one of the things that stands out so much is there's no doubt here. When Prabhupada's talking and writing these things, he's writing from experience. And that's like a whole, this is what moved this whole movement along all those years when Prabhupada was with us. Is that, we're so imperfect and so covered over, but we're struggling along with our chanting and our bhajan. But we're linked up to someone who is, there, who's actually manifest. Never a hint of doubt. Because it literally, how can you doubt, that there's a wall there? In other words, it was like direct perception. And on the basis of that, you can develop faith. It's very difficult because this is all mysterious stuff. It's all beyond the realm of our it's transcendental, meaning beyond the realm of our senses and mind. So how can we have faith in it? There has to be the implantation of faith. Somebody comes back from China and describes to you what he saw there, what he or she saw there. So, do I believe it? I've never been there. I may have seen a map or something, you know what I mean? But I've never been there. So why should I believe? Well, because of course they got pictures, right? They got other things that they brought back. So it's a little easier to believe that it's there. Because you've also been to strange cities that you haven't been, and you've confirmed that they exist in so many things. But the point is that all the time we rely on accounts from people and media that we don't directly experience. And we have faith. Now that's also dangerous because the person can also lie to you, or the media can also distort, right? In other words, just think of what Maya's been doing all these years. We're absolutely convinced this is reality, this is me, I know. Right?
And there's so many leaders, spiritual leaders coming and speaking, and time after time, you see, if you take enough time, you realize he's playing the guru game. He's playing the guru game.
Yes, and you have some very influential and charismatic and well-spoken. Vivekananda causes so much havoc. Maybe he was convinced that Brahman is above. Nirguna. You have to close the door. Hare Krishna, either out or in. Then, yes, this is Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya. This is the age of Kali. And the age of Kali, there's all these disqualifications. One is people are very lazy in the matter of self-realization. Out of millions of people, it's a handful that are really even interested in these things. And okay, I'm interested. They have to go to some source of knowledge. There has to be a book, there has to be a person, there has to be a yoga studio, a sangha, something. So you go, but the chances are very high, even amongst those who are interested, you're going to be misguided. So that's a sumanda matayo. It's right in the Bhagavatam. Manda sumanda matayo. And therefore, manda bhagya, unfortunate. And upadrita, always disturbed. The minds are always disturbed. So you've got the cards stacked against us in this age, a lot. And you're absolutely correct. The foundation of any process, actually even material or spiritual, is faith. Because even some material process, you don't know, the proper means. If I want to become a car mechanic, what do? Can't just open the hood and start looking. Maybe that. Soon I'll have a dysfunctional car, right? So I go to somebody who knows. I get a manual. You get online, libraries. You have to have some source of knowledge. If the source of knowledge is untrustworthy, you're helpless. And that's why Prabhupada's main mission was himself personifying the source of real knowledge and giving us the source of knowledge and the reliable books of knowledge. So, but the challenge is upon us to take on the process. And if we do it right, then the faith increases. But if we then slack off and deviate, then the faith decreases. We've seen. You know, how many of our God brothers, even in this 100-mile radius from here? There's probably maybe 100, you know, around here, maybe 60, 70, I don't know. But many, you know, you don't hear from them at all. You know, there's a handful. There's like 4,700, actually 4,750 initiated disciples of Prabhupada. Some have passed on now, I don't know, maybe 100, 200. But there's an awful lot of them out there, and you hardly hear about any of them. So at one point, the faith was enough to be serious and regulated and get initiated, you know. But then, you know, Prabhupada's disappearance was a huge trauma. A lot of devotees just depended on Prabhupada, even if he wasn't personally there. The fact that, you know, and that was, you know, so the faith can wax and wane. That's why the sadhana is so important. It keeps us, you know, moving in the right direction, or at least not stepping back. All right, let's go on. Yasmat charamatito ham aksharad pichotamaha atosmi loke vedecha patita purushotamaha. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Purport: no one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word loke signifies, quote, in the Paurusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures. As confirmed in the Nirukti dictionary, lokyate vedarto anena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, the Chandogya Upanishad 8.12.3. Tavad esha samprasado smat charirat samutaya param jyoti rupam sampadya svena rupena vinispadyate sa uttama purushaha. The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as the Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara, that's Vyasadeva. He explains that Vedic knowledge is Vyasadeva. So one thing is that's important to understand, that there's no super soul in Goloka Vrindavan, because everything is soul. Everything is solid spirit. Krishna is no different between Krishna and his body. There's even a verse for it. Dehi deha vibhago yam neshure vidyate kvachit. That it is known that there is never a difference between the dehi and the deha. Dehi means the embodied soul. The deha is the body itself. Dehi nosmin yata dehe. Right in the beginning in text 13, chapter 2. That the embodied soul within the body passes through different ages. Right, the body is actually changing from childhood, adolescence, and like middle age, old age, like that. And at the end, the body is dysfunctional, goes away. But the soul is eternal, never changes. But there's no such difference in Krishna and his body. That's why every part of the body is memorable. You can meditate on the lotus feet, on the hands, on the eyes, the whole form. Is all pure spirit, and that's true of everything in Goloka Vrindavan. Here, the medium is all this matter, this very complex, mix of earth, water, fire, air, ether, subtle matter, mind. All of that is not there in the spiritual world. There are senses, but it's all made of the same substance, the internal energy of Krishna, which is divided in three. There's the Sambit, Sandini, and Ladini. The Sandini is under the auspices of Balaram. It gets kind of complicated. But that's all the things in the spiritual world. The body of Krishna and his devotees and everything is manifest by this energy, Sandhini Shakti. It's all conscious, but it has its divisions. And Sambit is the knowledge potency. And it oversees the lila and the different understandings of the different varieties of emotions and all these different things. It's Sambit potency. And then the Ladini Shakti is the pleasure potency, which is personified as Srimati Radharani, and is the essence of love of God, is prema. And when you say Hare, Hare Krishna, that Hare is Radharani in the vocative form. The word is Hara. Hara is a name for the goddess of fortune. In this case, it's understood to be Radha. So it becomes Hare in the vocative form. Hare can also be Hari in the vocative form. As we say, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare. We sing every time from the Shringadev. That Hare is Jagadish, Krishna. That's in the Shringadev. Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
You're saying Hare can also
Yes.
refer to...
Yes, we sing every day. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. That refers to Jagadish. That's a male. That's Krishna. Jagannath. But in the formula of Hare Krishna, it's Hara. It's a feminine form. So that's personified as Radharani. It's Ladini Shakti. Ladini Shakti. We sing that also. Palad halada dayane, right? So I just realized this a few years ago. Paladananda Swami, you know for years. You don't think, what does it mean? Paladananda is the name for Nrsingadev, the bliss of Palad. He who gives bliss to Palad. Palad, the boy saint. So it's good to remember these names. That's a lot. So now that Ladini Shakti, this is all explained in the 3rd chapter here at the end with this lust section. When the Ladini Shakti is properly directed back toward Krishna, it means that when we try to give pleasure to Krishna, we come under the purview of that Ladini Shakti and we experience the bliss of love of Godhead. Even in little drops, it's so pleasing, right? This is what keeps us coming back. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Even though we're so covered, we can still experience it because it's so powerful. So that love of God, that Ladini Shakti, becomes, curdled by contact with the modes of nature. And when we try to emanate it and be the center of pleasure, that's called kama. Kama and prema. Right? Prema is love of God. Kama is love of serving one's senses. Krishna's Kaviraj. He says, I always forget the Bengali of this verse. Atmandriya priti vanche tareve kam. Krishnandriya priti ichi dare prem nam. Means that Atmendriya priti vanche, when the desire to serve one's own senses and please one's own senses, that's called kama. But the desire to please Krishna's senses is called prema. So even though we may not have the desire, if we do things that please Krishna's senses, we'll be feeling that we're moving along in Krishna consciousness. But the best is to consciously desire to please Krishna with our services. And not only Krishna, but his devotees. He's actually more pleased when we serve his devotees. And that's so easy, right? You can always find devotees to serve, do something. Serve out the Sunday feast sometime. You'll see there's a certain taste. I always like to say, the tendency is, okay, we had kirtan, now let's get on, and that's fine. You get into prasadam. But you have a limit to how much you can enjoy. But if you serve out, you can enjoy everybody's feast. The more the merrier, right? There's no limit. So that's the nature of service of Krishna, that there's no limit. Service to the senses is a total limit, plus a backlash. So here Krishna is like the next to last verse of the whole chapter. It's a short chapter. And he's saying, and I am known as yasmat chanamati, as beyond both of these. Yasmat chanamatito ham. Atito means it's transcendental. Right? Akshara vichotama. You see chara and akshara again. Same. Uttama means beyond, up above the tama, beyond the tama. Ato, therefore, asmi loke vedecha. And Prabhupada gives this interesting idea of loke means the Agama scriptures. So in the world and in the Vedas, I am known as the Purusha Uttama. That's the whole subject of this chapter. Purushottam Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. So Krishna is here, declaring himself again to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is the central, understanding is that we are eternally inferior, and we are eternally related to and part of this Supreme Person. So our natural function is the service of the Supreme Person. That's the basic principle of devotional service. It's not complicated, but it's difficult to realize moment to moment because we're so conditioned. And then this idea of the effulgence. Now here's the thing. The Supersoul comes out of the body, enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, and then his form remains in his spiritual identity. So the Supersoul is only present in the material world because there's no need for these Purusha avatars in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, everything is Krishna, right? Internal energy. But for the creation and maintenance, destruction of this world, you have these expansions in the Vishnu forms. And one of them is the intimate form of the Supersoul in everyone's heart. So in the spiritual world, the Supersoul is right in front of us in the form of Krishna. We don't need the internal, you know. And everybody is spontaneously doing the right thing. And if somehow or other someone does the wrong thing and that's selfish, then come back here, get covered over. If you're going to stay there, it's very strict. That's why we have to become pure before we go back together. All right, we can finish this chapter. Yes, go ahead.
This is saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're text 18 now. Go ahead.
This is saying that Vyasadeva is an incarnation of Paramatma.
At the end there, incarnate as son of Satyavati.
That Supreme Personality.
No, I think that himself there refers to the Supreme Personality. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself, I think that's Krishna, the Supreme Personality, as the son of Satyavati, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. Now, there's one indifference, so in one say you can say. But the important, there's an importance here in that the Supersoul, as Krishna says again, text 15, he's giving knowledge, right, to everyone. So that knowledge, the all-important knowledge is the knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita. He's also giving us, if we want, material knowledge. Right? The super soul, we get born into a certain family or a different species. We don't know what to do. Where is it coming from? It's instinct. No, it's coming from the super soul, telling us how, in the human form, we can, follow our karma. We don't know why we take the left turn instead of the right turn, but it makes all the difference. Here we get the accident, there we go to our destination. It's a very, very complex web, and it needs to be like the super brain that can figure it all out. Only the super soul. So he's helping us fulfill our karma, reminding us what of our unfulfilled desires that we're trying to fulfill in this lifetime. That's kind of the upadrashta anumanta, overseeing and sanctioning, but not as our desire. It's kind of the official function of the super soul. But when we want to approach the super soul in the form of Krishna or any other bona fide form, then super soul gives us guidance how we can progress spiritually. We still can't hear in detail, but he gives us how we can come in touch with Prabhupada, how we come in touch with the bona fide spiritual master, how we can come in touch with the real books, right? So that's the super soul appearing externally as the Bhagavad Gita, as the devotees, to give us the same instruction. Surrender to me, chant Hare Krishna. So that's why I love this verse, Uddhava, because it all comes down to really ultimately a very personal relationship. That's what's all about bhakti. So Uddhava is receiving the knowledge from Krishna. In the 11th canto is described. We get the hint of it in the 3rd canto. We're reading now the first few chapters of the 3rd canto. You remember Vidura is traveling, and he meets Uddhava. He wants to take initiation. He wants to get knowledge from him. And he asks him for knowledge about Krishna, and then Uddhava goes into ecstasy. He couldn't speak for a while, and he starts recounting Krishna's Leela, And he tells him, oh yes, I got instruction from Krishna just before you went, back to the spiritual world. And so, but he doesn't give the details. That comes in the 11th canto. It's called the Uddhava Gita. And then Uddhava sends Vidura to Maitreya, because Maitreya was also there in the shadows, hearing everything also. Maitreya is senior to Vidura. Uddhava is younger. So the etiquette is that he shouldn't take, your guru shouldn't be younger than you. That's the etiquette. So anyway, in that Uddhava Gita, in the midst of it, just as Arjuna, he asks questions, it's always like that. So Uddhava, he's encouraging Krishna to give him more knowledge and tell him about this. And so in the middle of that, he says, oh, naivo payanti pachatin kapayastavesha, Brahmayushaprikatam Vindamudakspavanta Yonta Bahis Tanubodham Ashubhan Vadunvan Achaya Cheta Babusham Swakatim Hyanakti. There's a great verse, and it's very pertinent to the whole topic here. It says, even the great devotee sages, even if they had a lifetime of Brahma, they couldn't fully express their gratitude to you. He's speaking directly to Krishna. Because you appear in two ways, externally and also internally. Internally as the Supersoul, and externally as yourself, or as the sages, or as the books. Yontar Bahis Tanubhutam. You know, every syllable, every word is important. Tanubhutam means to those who are bearing the burden of a material body. You don't need this body, you know, it's just a big burden. So Tanubhutam. Ashubhang Vadunvan, to cleanse away all the inauspicious things. How? You appear externally as Acharya, and Chaitya Vapushas, and the Chaitya Guru, means the Guru within. So the Acharya is the external, you know, devotee, pure devotee like Prabhupada. And Chaitya Vapushas, in two forms, two bodies. To do what? Swagatim Vyanakti, to describe and outline the way back to you. Swagatim, the path to yourself. You know, so this is Krishna's mercy on us. So, was there a question there that was an answer to? I've lost track. Anyway, there's something interesting. All right, so we are now on text 19. I'm sorry, I thought we were at text 19. So now he confirms that. Oh, there, this is winding up. Yomam evam sammudho janati purushottamam sasavavid bhajati mam savabhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharat. Purport. There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth, but the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step. And still, there are so many stubborn commentators on the Bhagavad Gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here, Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from the Bhagavad Gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. Now, one note on, time out for a little editorial understanding. This word purpose, which you think, well, what purpose means? Purpose is obvious. But in Prabhu's lexicon, believe me, I studied this very. Oftentimes, purpose means purport, meaning. You look up purpose in the Oxford English Dictionary, and you see that purpose can also mean meaning. Whereas here it means, why they wrote it, what's the purpose, which overlaps with the meaning, but it's not identical with meaning. But here, I think that this purpose could very well be purport. In other words, really knows what the Vedas mean. Not those who say that the living entity and the Supreme are one. They don't know the real meaning of the Vedas. Anyway, take it as purpose makes sense here. That's why it stays. But I think purport makes more sense. The word bhajati is very significant. So here we have bhajati, as in bhakti, as in bhajan. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness, in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge in the Vaishnav Parampara, That's disciplic succession. It is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the supreme absolute truth. He has already come to the point. Because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, he has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time. So, this is... Okay, let's go through this. So first, Yo Mam Evam Asam Mudho. So this word mudha appears again and again in the Bhagavad Gita. Mudha is a fool, someone who's bewildered. So here's Asam Mudho. As Sambuddha means, Asambuddha means totally not bewildered. That's the idea. Who knows Krishna to be that same Supreme Person. In other words, here's Krishna on the battlefield, with the two arms, and he's saying, I am that same Supreme Person. And then this phrase, which is kind of puzzling. So sarva vid bhajati man. Sarva vid? Doesn't that means knower of everything? I thought how could we know everything? So this requires some explanation, which isn't here in this purport. But it came up, over the years. I've engaged in a few polemical battles on the internet, And one of them, there was some idea, there was some claim that Srila Prabhupada was omniscient, just like Krishna. It came up like that. Huh?
Because he's
Trikaligya and Sarvagya and all this stuff. So I said, that can't be right. So I did a whole lot of research, and Prabhupada directly contradicted that. Of course, you say, oh yeah, he's just being humble, But no. And so the question came in the morning walk, because this is a big thing for editors. You have to understand how these books came to be, how Prabhupada's books came to be. Prabhupada, in order for us to have the number of books that we have, it wasn't possible to produce those books as books are ordinarily produced in the outside world, where an author writes the book, types it out usually. He couldn't dictate it, but that's, usually you type it, then he himself will, look and edit it himself. I mean, I remember way back when we were studying how to write more effectively. I forget the name of the guy, but he had this instruction. When you write, you just write. Just write. Don't try to overthink it. And then after you write, then you go back and edit it and rewrite. And this is how you flow. You won't have any writer's block. If you try to perfect every sentence, you'll never get anything done. You'll end up with a white blank page. So the Prabhupada didn't write like that. He just flowed out. And so when he got this ability to dictate, that was even faster. It speeded everything up. But it was more work for the editors, and also the typists. I mean, this Bhagavad Gita, it was first produced in the late 60s, 68, 69, 70. That's where, the first abridged edition came out in 68, I believe. And then when one with the purports eventually was published in 1972. But who knew, what these words were, or even the concepts? You had this typist. Remember, what was the name of the guy? Neil, who walked in off the street. Yeah. He had an assignment in college. He was taking a religion course to actually join a cult for a summer and live with them and then report on it. So he picked us. So they had the dictaphone that Gargamuni bought. Said, well, this will speed things up. And somehow Prabhupada miraculously knew how to work the whole thing. It was like some mystic. I just read this recently. He brought it in, and he had a manual, and he was going to explain to Prabhupada, and said, let me see it. Before you know it, he knows how to use it. Mystic potency. But still, the transcribing is a whole thing, because you have pedals, to send it back and everything. So nobody knew how to do that. They hardly knew how to type, what to speak of using the dictaphone. So what to do? They're getting all these tapes piling up, which are expensive, a few dollars each. And they don't have anyone to type. So in walks Neil, the typist, one of the many miracles at the beginning. Were you there at the time?
No.
So anyway, yeah, I know how to type. So then he sits down. But what does he know of, all of this Sanskrit? Prabhupada's accent, the strange concept. So that's what Hayagriva had to work with. The transcript that, sometimes big blanks in it, strange words, It had to be done. There's nobody else, you know. So anyway, that Bhagavad Gita was eventually published as the Macmillan Gita in 1972, and that's the one that I read when I came in 1973. We all read that. But then you hear, well, what's the difference between what the realized soul is saying and what the Bhagavad Gita is saying and ordinary books of knowledge or other Bhagavad Gitas you can get in the library or from the Penguin edition or whatever? Well, these are, you know, beyond the 4 defects, right? What are those 4 defects? Make mistakes, imperfect senses, become illusion, and cheat, right? Well, the Acharya is free of those things. So now what does that do for the editors? I'm looking and I read one paragraph of the original transcript that Prabhu dictated or typed out the first couple of chapters, and I see a mistake. It could be a spelling mistake. It could be any kind of mistake. You know, now what do I do? What do I do? Do I fix it or not? You know, well, okay, I've got the mandate to fix it. But what is a mistake? What is a transcendental thing? What do I not fix? What do I fix? You see the dilemma. So the extreme view is that whatever has appeared, you know, was coming from Krishna as absolute. Prabhupada knows everything, like it says, Sarvabid. Krishna is writing through him. Don't mess with it. You know, grammar, spelling, okay, that's it. You know. But there's an awful lot more. So Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari in 1973, was it? Maybe it was 75. I think it was 73. He was on a morning walk. Now at that point, it was, you know, it's hard to get on the morning walks. He kind of just insinuated on that morning, and not to just be on the morning walk, but ask Prabhupada a serious question. He was getting close to Prabhupada. He couldn't otherwise. So the question was, Srila Prabhupada, sometimes, you know, we see that the Acharya, you know, he wasn't saying, so the Acharya may misquote a verse, but we read about the Acharya beyond the 4 defects, never makes a mistake. So what do we do? How do we understand? Is it one of the things he knows everything, doesn't make a mistake? So it's a serious question for a service, you know. So Prabhupada answered, says, no. The Acharya is 75 because the CC had just come out, Chaitanya Charitamrita. The beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's 14 verses describing who Lord Chaitanya is, who Nityananda is, who Advaita is, who the Panchatattva is. You know, very important verse are expanded upon. So the one about Advaitacharya says, Advaitad Harinadvaitad, Acharya Bhakti Shankshana. I vacate the last 2 lines. So Prabhupada quoted that second line, Acharya, because Jayadvaita asked, what is the Acharya? Does he make mistakes? How can he make mistakes if he's beyond the 4 defects? So he says, no, he's Acharya because of his preaching. Because this is what it says in the verse, Acharya Bhakti Shankshana, because he's spreading bhakti everywhere. So this Sarvavid, no living entity can be truly Sarvavid, meaning knowing everything. That's only for Krishna. You know, Prabhupada says that in other places too. And so this Sarvavid is explained, not so much in this purport, but in other places. It means you know everything that you need to know to go back to Godhead and to engage in service to Krishna. What Krishna reveals to you. It's coming from the super soul. Now, just see, sometimes Krishna hides things from you for the sake of rasa. The gopis, by and large, all the residents of Vrindavan, can you just remind them, don't know that Krishna is God. As soon as you say don't know, then they're not Sarvavit. They're not omniscient, right? But that's good, because they're not knowing that Krishna is God, Almighty, you know, God. That enables them to love Krishna in an intimate way, to insult him. You were supposed to be at the rendezvous. What happened? You know, that's a loving exchange. If you think, you know, the super soul, oh my God. No more rasa, right? Or Mother Yashoda, when she saw all the universe in Krishna's mouth, it ruined the rasa. She had a glimpse that he was God. No good. Bring down the curtain again. Oh, he's just my little baby. You see? So this is Sarvavit, you know. It has to be understood. It doesn't mean that any living entity can know everything. It means that we know everything that we need. You know, that's important. Anyway, there's a lot more that we can say about that. All right, let's see, well, it'll be good. We'll finish this chapter because it's the last class for a while. Tomorrow is a special day. Iti guyatamam shastram idamuktam mayanaga etad buddha buddhiman syat kritikrityashta bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one. This, that Krishna is that very supreme person. He is the Purushottama. That's what this is. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Purport. The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all revealed scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present, under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. And thus one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service. However intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. The word anagha, by which Arjuna is addressed, is significant. Anagha, O sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities. Then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of the heart. And the rest of the chapter, from the 6th verse through the end, discusses Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. Oh, very important chapter. Just to review really quickly, it's a short chapter. Remember, we began with 3 verses describing the upside-down banyan tree, that this entire creation is said there's an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward, its branches down, whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Now, why is it imperishable? Well, there's an annihilation at a certain point, and everything gets destroyed in the material world. But still, even though it's destroyed, the manifestation is destroyed, but the energy itself is eternal. Because just because there's a universal annihilation, there's no universe, doesn't mean that everybody goes back to Godhead or gets liberation. The conditioning is still there on a subtle level, and the living entities all merge into the body of Mahavishnu and just wait there, millions and millions of years, suspended animation. But we have that subtle conditioning that's still with us. The mind is still there. We're asleep. And then the next manifestation, we come out and begin all over again. So that's why the tree is imperishable. And it describes the branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the 3 modes of nature. Twigs are the objects of the senses. Roots has roots going down. These are found the fruit of actions of human society. So it's all very complicated, very, very entangling. So we can't perceive the beginning and the end. No one can understand where it ends or begins. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Prabhupada explains in the purport, it's resting, the root is resting on desire, material desire. That's what gives the nourishment to the tree. So therefore, the sword, individually we can cut down the tree for ourselves, is the sword of vairagya, or detachment. Asanga shastrena. But that's not enough. Then we have to search out. Thereafter one must seek the place from which one, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to the Supreme Lord from whom everything began, from everything is extended since time immemorial. So this is the principle of bhakti. Yes, we have to try to control the senses, become detached, but that's only half of it. Simultaneously, you have to become attached to Krishna. In fact, this latter even precedes the former. Even if you're the most attached, sinful person in the world, you can still chant Hare Krishna. And as soon as you chant Hare Krishna and come into association with devotees, immediately the purification begins. You don't know how, but it's happening. You know. And if you continue with it, and by hearing and chanting, studying, understanding, intelligence has to be purified. Then the sword of detachment becomes sharper and sharper, and you're cutting down this tree. And more of your attachment is to Krishna and spiritual matters. The attachment has to be there. It can't be suppressed. But then there comes a surrender. You know, surrender your will. Because the mind, thinking, feeling, willing. So the willing has to be surrendered. And then the fifth is this description of surrender. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, false association, understand the eternal, done with material lust, freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, who unbewildered know how to surrender to the Lord, attain that eternal kingdom. Because he's describing how to go back to Godhead. Right? So it's a tall order. This is an advanced verse, but it's important to study it. Then, little description of the supreme planet, Vaikuntha, that supreme abode of mind, not illumined by sun or moon nor by fire or electricity. So it's self-effulgent. One who reaches it never returns to this world. This is 4 or 5 times Krishna says. You don't have to come back. Then description of the living entity and transmigration begins, text 7. Famous verse, probably second most famous in this chapter. Living entities in this world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. And Prabhu would always emphasize, sanatana, sanatana. We are anksha eternally. We are minute eternally. We never become the supreme. We never merge. We're always this individual anksha. And then the process of transmigration. Living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So this is one of many places in the Bhagavad Gita where we're reminded that our consciousness, which we are cultivating, we are forming every day. This is who we really are, and this is what's going to determine our fate. So this mindfulness, if you want to use that word, of well, how am I using my senses? Where is my mind now? You know, that's critical. And you know, the pure devotees, they're always thinking of Krishna, thinking until it becomes second nature. Can't forget. But now we can't remember, so we have to work hard to remember, and not do things that help us to forget. So just a very illustrative. The soul's like the wind, and it picks up different fragrances, which are like thoughts in the consciousness. And each body, we get a certain set of senses. Living entity, this takes another gross body, attains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, sense of touch, grouped around the mind, thus we enjoy or experience, or as I mentioned, become addicted to a certain set of sense objects. Some of you weren't here. Upasevate, the last word in the verse, also means addicted. You become completely accustomed. The hog becomes addicted to stool, and which we can't imagine, but that's what happens in a certain body. And if you're foolish, you can't understand how the living entity can transmigrate from one body to another under the spell of the modes of nature. But those who are trained can see. Again, this theme of purifying your vision through knowledge so that you can see how these things are happening. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see it clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated so cannot see what's taking place. Then he switches gears a little bit, describes how he's entering into the world and helping us digest food and helping the planet stay. The splendor of the sun dissipates the darkness, comes from me, splendor of the moon, splendor of the fire. Prabhupada explains how the moon is causing the vegetables to prosper. We need these things to live. I enter each planet. By my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So at every second we're dependent on the Lord one way or another. I'm the fire of digestion, the bodies of living entities. I join with the air of life, outgoing, incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of food. Then the famous verse, 15, I'm seated in everyone's heart. For me come remembrance, knowledge, forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I'm to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, the knower of the Vedas. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and infallible, means those who fall down, those who don't fall down from the spiritual world. In the material world, every living entity has fallen. They were fallible. Spiritual world, they're infallible. They haven't fallen. Besides these 2, there's the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. Then Krishna reveals himself to be that same Supreme Person. Because I'm transcendental, beyond both fallible and infallible, because I'm the greatest, I'm celebrated both in this world and the Vedas as that Supreme Person. And if you believe it, then you're asamuda. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Person, without doubting, is knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and is disclosed by me to you. Whoever understands this will become wise and endeavors for no perfection. Such a nice chapter, important chapter. Any final questions on this? We're kind of almost out of time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Now we're going to try to continue these classes. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Daya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Acharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad.
Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON DPT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Buddhika Acharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad. His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Prem to Bhagavad Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham ki Jai. Navadik Mayapur Dham ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai. Jagannath Swami ki Jai. Ganga Mahi ki Jai. Yamuna Mahi ki Jai. Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Bhakti Devi ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Bhagavad
food?
Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes there's a little bit. Anyway, tomorrow's a fast day, so somebody got solved.
So it's means of fast. Fasting today, like the entire day, or
What's that?
we fasting the entire day?
We fast until all day tomorrow, until tomorrow night, until the next day. Tomorrow night, okay. Yes. Wait, there's no piece.
So this is, you have two phones.
Yes, I do. This is my
Bhajan phone.
what's it?
Bhajan phone, this is one with all the shots on it, the pictures?
Yeah, this will be the yes. Well, this is where I load to when my phone has no more space. I load all my pictures because I take a ton
Okay.
of pictures.
But you don't make phone calls?
No. But you can connect Wi-Fi and it's 2307. And she's born September 23rd. Well, no, September 23rd, 2007, so 2307.
That is good.
Prabhu, don't you
I was such a question to ask you that's been deafening inside for a long time. Now, humans,
Human beings.
human beings.
Pretty much.
Some people, God is within us in a dominant form, right? And
God is with us.
in a dominant form. So it's always there, but some people
It's
don't.
common to us.
Yeah. But some people come to the temple and they get spirituality.
Poor guy. Couldn't take it.
So this is what I'm trying to ask you. How does it work with people? Does it just one day it's meant to be in this earth, this time in their lives, or maybe in the next?
It's like what happens is from previous life,
Yeah.
used by accident, by some good fortune, you perform some kind of devotional service. It's called the Gita by the mercy of the guru or some devotee gives you a chance to perform the work, even unknowingly, just by accident. And that plants a seed. Now that lifetime you may not pursue it,
Okay.
but it fructifies next lifetime. That so many million people get a chance to come to the temple, but only a few come because they've got something from previous lifetime.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the thing. But even in this lifetime, if someone is fortunate enough to meet someone who is able to attract them into the association,
Yeah.
and they do a little chanting, they get some prasad and something, that purifies so that the seed is planted. But then they go off because the mind is very fickle. Maybe years again they come. Like we've had so many instances where somebody buys a book in the 70s, I don't know what this is all about. They put it on their shelf. They don't throw it away. And for years, and their child gets it when they're 16, 15, so that's an interesting book.